Good afternoon, everyone. Everyone who's watching at home or at work. It's beautiful here, so I'm really happy to be here. An amazing moment to be part of this program and be talking about where we are, this idea of kind of the next normal, the new normal. We've had a bit of distance from 2020, so we can kind of take a look and work out like where we are. And we've also got some glimmers of hope, so we can start to think about what exactly does it mean when we say the new normal or the next normal. But I kind of want to question that a little bit. Is it the new normal? That would mean that we're completely re-engineering or restructuring or rebuilding from where we are. And I came across this really interesting and actually quite inspiring perspective, that's what I'm talking about today, on where we're at. And it says that it's not that the world has fallen apart so much as we are rediscovering its true nature. And I really love that as a thought, because I really do think it's the true nature of things that's going to keep us kind of moving forward and kind of having a chance to kind of correct what's happened, but also make sure that we're stepping forward in the right way. Because it really does feel like there is an increased focus on what is real and what is true at the moment. There's a kind of deliberate rejection of anything that feels like artifice or illusion, any sense of illusion. And there is also what feels like at times this violent rejection of anything that feels like a constructed narrative. And we've seen that across, kind of the institutions in our society, public figures. There is this kind of violent and sometimes very uncomfortable of anything that feels constructed or not real or authentic. So revealing your cards feels like it's the order of the day. And we could say 2020 was a lot of things. The word unprecedented was used quite a lot. But I think 2020 was the year where you had to have a point of view. It was all about having a point of view. The biggest question that people had for each other is, what is your point of view? Where do you stand? What's your position? What do you think about this? It was how you measured yourself against the next person to see kind of where they sat on stuff. And it's how we helped each other also kind of decode and interpret what was going on in the world. So having a point of view was not only important, and it obviously is important for everyone, but it was actually a way of participating and engaging and being part of everything that was happening. And for better and for worse, everyone was expected to have a point of view. And this didn't fall short or change when it came to companies or brands. In fact, as people began to question the influence, the power, the status that companies have in society, it became impossible almost for companies to avoid the question, like, what is your point of view? And if you work in advertising, marketing, you work in brands, having a point of view has always been something that has been deemed to be powerful for a brand, and we talk about it quite a lot. But perhaps until now, we've kind of used that idea in the safest sense. You know, what's your point of view on the category? What's your point of view versus your competitors? What's your position on what consumers need or what they need to feel? But now it really feels like companies are being asked to stand on the things that really matter and really have value in people's lives. I work for Wieden+Kennedy. We call a point of view the superpower of a brand, and you know, it's injected into the work we do. So P&G, rather than a point of view on just the products, but a point of view on what it means to make an athlete or who it takes to make an athlete. Versus talking about the social platform itself and the tech that is involved in Instagram. It was a point of view on the inherent creativity of youth if you take away the pressure of permanence. So this was kind of Instagram stories. Lurpak, which, we talk about the ingredient of butter, yes, but actually there's a bigger point of view in all of that, which is the heroism, the trials, the tribulations of the amateur home chef. But as we're in 2020 and 2021, I think, a point of view is being asked to do more than just the advertising and speak to more than just what the marketing department would like to land. People now want to know where companies stand on fundamental issues and actually what they're going to do about it, and they want to hear a point of view. But I think there's an important point in all of this. Like, one does not just arrive at a point of view. You don't just wake up one day as a brand and say, hey, I've got a point of view on something, and I want you to listen to me. So I'm going to explore today a little bit around kind of how points of view, why they matter, but importantly, what are the building blocks to make sure that as a brand you have a point of view, that point of view is taken seriously, it's welcomed, and people see it as authentic. So today's a little bit about digging deep into the soul of brands and companies and working out what lies beneath, and where point of views can be born from. So starting off, and I think this is the same of people as it is of brands and companies, a point of view is really born of your beliefs. And beliefs, you know, we've talked about them, we talk about them a lot. They're sprinkled onto, you know, corporate websites. We see them pop up on briefs. We talk about them in relation to kind of the competition. But I'm talking about beliefs that matter to humans. Until now, those brand beliefs have probably been allowed to be a little inconsequential. Mr. Nice Guy stuff, don't want to alienate anyone or lose consumers. But it's pretty obvious that to have a point of view that matters today is to have beliefs that matter. The best modern brands that we would say in the world today that have a welcomed voice, have beliefs that matter. I'm very lucky to have worked on Nike for many years and still do, and that is a brand that not only has beliefs, but believes in the power of beliefs. One of them being everything you need is already inside, the words of the forefather of Nike, Bill Bauman. And if you believe that, you can have a point of view on the limitlessness of human potential and human dreams. If you believe that victory is in having done your best, if you've done your best, you've won, you have a point of view on what else it means to be a successful athlete and what else you stand for and what else you represent. And at the core of it all, if you believe if you have a body, you're an athlete, it allows you to innovate, to build products, to build services for anybody that wants to move, no matter who you are or where you are. So I'm just going to show you something today that brings to life that belief.
يلا يا ماما راح نسويها ونسبح اليوم. راح أعد ل3. أكتمي نفسك. جاهزة؟ 1 2 3. حركي يدينك مضبوط. حركي يدينك. ارفعي جسمك وخليه مستقيم. اوكي حركي رجلينك. حركي رجلينك، حركي. خذي نفس وطلعيه لشوي. انتي مو لحالك. انا جنبك. سويتيها انتي قدها. سويتيها. سويتيها انتي قدها. يلا لا توقف الحين، كملي.
So if you believe everyone should have access to sport, if you have a body, you're an athlete, why wouldn't you make products for every woman, no matter the context, so that they're not held back? But often when I kind of cite Nike examples, like, okay, yeah, but that's Nike, they're the biggest brand in the world. So I want to also give you some examples from non-mega brands, but very important brands in our world today. REI, I mean, lots of people will kind of recognize this. It was the opt-outside instead of the Black Friday sales. But if you want to land a credible point of view on what nourishes the human soul, and maybe that's not kind of the Black Friday mega smash for sale items, you can do that because you believe it's in the wild, untamed, and natural places that we find our best selves. You can make some really good ice cream, but you can also believe in fighting for social justice, supporting marginalized groups, protecting the planet, because your company is built on the belief that capitalism can be caring. And if you're Apple and you believe that you're on the face of the earth to make great products, and you believe in the simple and not the complex, you can have a point of view, you can have a point of view that humans are inherently creative, but they just need the right tools and the right inspiration. So what else is part of this? So we have the idea of beliefs, but I think beliefs come into play when you really believe in them to take a strong position. So the second part of this, I think points of view are born of a position. People want to know what is your position, not what is your marketing positioning. That's what we're hearing today. Historically, most brands have stayed neutral on some of the hot topics because they don't want to alienate consumers. But there's more and more research showing that consumers are not buying that. They really want to know where brands stand. There's some interesting research that we've seen come out over the last year, but also a couple of years. 63% of surveyed consumers in this particular survey said that they would purchase products and services from companies that stand for a purpose that reflects their own. 57% want companies to share a position or opinion on like racial equity, social justice, anti-discrimination, 48% on climate change. So those are some really strong numbers indicating that points of view from brands need to be out there in the world. Some brands really lean into this, and it's a kind of natural space. I love this from Patagonia, sewed these labels into all their clothes in the last year. Some, it's not a comfortable space, but I think everything's showing us that it is time to touch the third rail, to use the political phrase, to lean into all the issues, those hot topics, all the places that we wouldn't have broached in the past, because consumers expect it, but also, you know, if you have that position in society, if you have that stature, you probably have to have a point of view and a side that you've picked. But what I will say is sometimes the third rail comes to you, and in that moment you have to decide what you're going to do with it, which is something that kind of happened this Christmas just past with some work that was made in the UK by our London office, which I'll show you here and then I'll talk about.
Hey.
Hey, it's me.
Oh, hey, love.
How are you? How's Mum?
Yeah, well, we're fine. We're all good, we're good.
I'm getting so excited for Christmas.
Christmas! I just really hope I can see you lot.
Me too. I cannot stop thinking about Mum's roasties.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. What about my gravy?
What about your gravy?
Hey, you, what's going down?
Dad, not the song.
Gravy boat's coming in town.
Oh.
It's not any old ship, just take a sip.
Dad.
It's filled with scrummy and saucy bits.
How does Mum put up with you? Your gravy is pretty good, to be fair, and I just really want to be home for it.
So my gravy is the best.
Dad.
Honey, she says my gravy's the best. Honey.
I mean, what we have there is a beautiful film that was capturing also the moment of, you know, Christmas 2020, where families who had been in isolation from each other for a good part of the year were reminiscing about Christmas, but also thinking about whether they would be able to get back together for Christmas. And it received a deluge of racist comments in the UK, which was very surprising. Sainsbury's were very measured about it, and they, took the high ground. When they go low, we go high. I love that. But they released a statement where we're basically saying we stand for diversity. This is not a big deal. We have shoppers from all different parts of the community, so why shouldn't they be represented in our work? Sainsbury's is for everyone, and it's important that our advertising reflects this. But arguably, the stronger statement, and really, kind of leaning into a side on this, came from Co-op, one of their competitors, who actually, in that moment, stood in solidarity with Sainsbury's against kind of this racist sentiment. They themselves also received this, kind of this same sentiment when they released some of their advertising, and they got real, and they said, online communities shouldn't welcome these views, nor should society, and we definitely don't welcome shoppers who think it's okay to post racist tweets. Go Co-op. But remember, picking a side is for life, not just for Christmas. If you, in the past, have picked one side, and then you've decided that you want to pick another side because that first side wasn't so great, and nothing appears to have changed with you as a company apart from the context that's around you, it will catch up with you. And this is taken from L'Oreal, who at some point a few years ago dropped one of their models because she spoke out about kind of racially motivated attack in Charlottesville and had a very strong point of view on it, and they dropped her because they thought she was being too divisive. And then come 2020, when brands are asked to stand up and have a point of view on racial equality, they issued this, speaking out is worth it. But the internet never forgets, and they were called out on it, and it was seen as a very empty point of view. It was not backed up by real sentiment, real actions, and kind of real beliefs by the company. So related to that is the idea of solutions. What are you going to do? So you have a point of view, but a point of view should be born out of the desire for solutions. Because really, everybody knows talk is cheap. Solutions ain't. And that is something that we've seen in society as well. People have stood up to be counted on their points of view and put their money where their mouth is. Some really interesting stats from 2020 in the UK and in the US. We saw charitable donations rise in the first half of the year. And this is at a time where people had huge financial and economic uncertainty. People were losing their jobs, had lost their jobs, but yet still people felt passionate enough about their points of view to put money towards it. So points of view that matter need to lead to solutions that matter. That is, kind of the order of the day. Brands are being asked to not just add hot air and noise and we think this, but to actually add tangible value to people's lives. And there's a really interesting way of thinking about this that I came across from an advocacy agency called Rally, who look at two kind of criteria of how well brands are engaging with the issues, but then also the actions. So how fluent is this brand in the issue, and how deeply are they willing to engage with it? To be issue fluent, you have to communicate about the given issue. You have to demonstrate that that the company understands the nuances and deeply cares about the topic. To demonstrate engagement, you're constantly dedicating time and energy and resources to change both internally and externally around a cause. So these are two really interesting criteria to work out. If you want to have a point of view, are you matching up to both of these things? And the litmus test was last year. It was Blackout Tuesday, brands posting black squares. But really, who was putting in the work? Who was putting in the work when it came to the fight for racial equality, and did that point of view stand up to that? A really interesting example in Netflix, actually, who did a lot of things even before this topic became a hot topic to make sure that they were really building structurally, internally, against their beliefs around this topic. So 2018, they hired a diversity and inclusion officer. They started to increase the number of of black employees or BIPOC employees. And then the most interesting thing, and I think the most significant thing that they did in that time, is that they decided to move a huge amount, I think $100 million of their investments into black-owned banks. And that was an idea that came out of a dinner with leaders at Netflix with black employees. And so you can see there that if you want to have a point of view in the world, if you want to have this program of a strong black lead, which launched in 2018, that promoted African American actors, you know, by the time they got to even posting a black square, that square was already filled with meaning. So high fluency and deep structural change are the things that brands are also going to have to invest in and engage in to have that point of view in the world. And so we talked a little bit about what happened at Netflix. I think that leads to my next point, which is actually that point of view starts from the inside out. Yes, it's your beliefs, it's your actions, but what's actually happening internally, and does that add up to this picture that you're putting out in the world? Because it's not just something to engage your audience with, but it's something that you should live and breathe within your kind of internal culture. Dan Wieden said a lot of smart things. I love this one. It's probably my favorite because it's about culture and people. It's the culture that lifts the people. It's the people who make the work. It's the work that makes the relationships between good companies and their customers. It's all about walking the talk internally. A point of view that you exude in the world has to be lived and has to be breathed by your people internally. Because we know that employees want synergy between their beliefs and the company that they work in, and it's really important. And people will look into the inner workings of a brand to work out, does this match up? Does this sound true? Our friends at Patagonia, who sewed all those labels into clothes, have an amazing internal culture. They've recognized to be the best outdoor company in the world, they need to fill their company with people that love the outdoors. But not only that, they've built a supportive culture that allows those that love the outdoors to show that in really significant ways. And this is brilliant. I learned that actually written into employee policies is that they will bail out anybody who has been arrested and is in jail at peaceful protest on behalf of the planet, which is a brilliant company policy, and that is definitely walking the talk. Because a mantra there is there's no business if there is no planet. I think what they're also saying is there is no business if you don't have a workforce that cares about the planet, and then you won't have a brand if you don't have a workforce that cares about the planet. So internal culture, everything has to kind of add up to the same picture, and these are all things that you know, brands should think about and talk about internally. I mean, you can go so deep on lots of these things, and there's so many good and rich examples, but I have a finite amount of time on this stage, so I'm going to wrap up. But I think it boils down to kind of 4 key principles. Believe in something, you know, have your beliefs, stand by them no matter what, so pick your side and stay with it and believe in that. Do something about it, so you know, do something positive action in the world, add that tangible value, and then build something around it, your company, your people, your workforce. And I think once you've got all of those in place, people will be ready to listen. Thank you very much.
Very interesting, very important, very timely. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
You know, some of these points are obviously easy. Pro-athlete, pro-creativity, pro-family. Those are nice. But, you know, you talked about the third rail, but what is your advice what if when it's so divisive? What if it splits 50% of the people? I mean, we're all agreement with those things, but what if 50% of the people or more disagree with your position? How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, I think the stakes are a lot higher these days, and I think people are expecting businesses to take risks in standing by those points of view. And you saw it with Nike when they put the Colin Kaepernick workout in the world. There were people burning shoes. There were people saying that they were rejecting the brand.
People did not think that was going to go well.
People did not think it was going to go well. And if it means you lose some of your consumers, but the rest of them are more deeply engaged, we see the stats that like 60+% of people will engage in that brand. They'll buy from that brand. They'll make decisions around that brand based on those political points of view. Those are the people actually that you want to talk to and you want to engage, and they'll be committed and they'll be longer term consumers. Maybe some people burnt their shoes or decided they didn't want to shop at Sainsbury's anymore. But I think that is the order of the day, is working out and signaling what's the business risk and what's the business investment that you're going to make to stand by those points of view.
And if you're a major brand, I mean, if you're an airline and, okay, climate change, okay, that's a bit loaded with an airline, but, yeah. I'm just thinking of, especially in like an America situation, which seems to be exporting, unfortunately, around the world. But, if 2/3 of the people don't agree with it, like, are we going to split into two sets of companies? I mean, are we going to have toothpaste for those who believe A and toothpaste for those who believe B? Is that the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably isn't the way we're going to go. And I imagine.
Is or is not?
It's not. It's not.
Yep.
That you would end up with companies splitting to kind of service, like, kind of.
I meant competing companies. Like, we stand for this, we stand for that.
Yeah, I mean, it could go that way, and I think if people are expecting to hear that, I think. That's where how you're going to have to set out your stall. I think there also are a lot of people that probably don't care as much, what's happening with those 30%, that in the survey that we don't talk to, who will continue to use. There would be some that are kind of, they say that they want that and they will act on that. So, I think probably most brands, will take a point of view that will kind of sweep up the majority. But you've seen it with, even quite conservative or traditionally kind of quiet brands in kind of Georgia this year with the voting rights and kind of what was felt to be this kind of constriction of voting rights, where you had brands like Coca-Cola, Delta, Major League Baseball, who traditionally wouldn't say anything. They're everyman brand, but they stood up because they believed that what was happening wasn't right and it wasn't aligned with their values. And if they can do that, and these are obviously kind of mega brands, but if they can do that, if they can risk that alienation of their consumer base, I think it shows that that's what brands have to step into.
But have they risked it yet? I mean, that was a surprising and an aggressive and a positive, from our side of things, first, step on that. Yeah. And, who would have thought that we would have a party in America that was against voting, Yes. But, it remains to be seen. At least I don't see it yet that Coca-Cola and Delta are going to go to the mat and say the laws they're passing in Texas and Florida are wrong. Yeah. I mean, that would be really putting your money where your mouth is. Yeah. Because if they did, they seem to not get that much pushback for it. Again, pleasantly, surprisingly so. Yeah. But are they going to go one step farther and say Governor of Florida is wrong? This bill is racist? Yeah. Well,
that remains to be seen, and that's kind of what what's happening in the back behind this, because these brands are having they have some form of lobbying power in some form. So how far that stretches will be really interesting. I think the case of Major League Baseball was quite interesting, where they've decided to move the All-Star game out of the state. So
ironically, liberal Atlanta, of course.
Yeah, they've moved it out, and that has alienated some people, and it's a good signal. It's showing intent, and it's showing that they are going to kind of back up their actions and beliefs. So I think we'll see more of that. Where there are kind of some very obvious actions that happen. I'd love to see more things like like Netflix, where you see them do stuff that's quietly in the background. It doesn't necessarily affect consumers, but they're making and committing to deep structural change. I hadn't even heard of it. Yeah, which is really interesting. And then you start to see things on a long tail versus just a short, impactful, in the moment PR type action.
Walking the talk. Then.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, I have to ask, but you know, some studies say that people talk a big game about wanting their brands to engage, but they don't actually. It doesn't affect their commercial decisions.
Yeah.
What would you say to those people?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, some people aren't thinking that deeply about the actual product, you know, that they're using, and it's like, okay, well, I'm going to buy this toothpaste versus that toothpaste. But there are brands that are asking for a lot of time and attention and deep engagement from people, and they are kind of espousing kind of points of view that are supposed to add up to value in people's lives. And I think those ones are the ones that are going to lead the charge, and then we'll see how the others are kind of like, when that, you know, that happens, how others back up. But there's definitely a spectrum. There is definitely a spectrum, and it depends. Is it a product? Is it the brand? Is it the holding company? What's the level that's speaking out and having a point of view?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kathryn. Fascinating.
Thank you.
Okay.